Hello, Jenny Hall here for Ink on 3. Today I'd like to share my technique for delicate ink blending. I'm stamping with the Dogwood Flower stamps and dies from Ink on 3, and I'll be doing some ink blending with a few Atelier inks. I'm going to use a special blending brush today. These are the Blending Buddy brushes from Trinity Stamps. And then I'll be using some Blackout ink to do my stamping. I'll also demonstrate how to use the ink off stamp cleaner. We're going to add some accents of liquid pixie dust. This is so pretty and shiny and just a perfect accent. I'm going to start out by placing an A2 side top folding note card directly behind a stencil. This is a rectangle stencil that's from Trinity Stamps, and I'm going to secure the back of it with some washi tape. This gives us a smaller area to do our stamping. Using the Blackout ink, we're going to stamp partially over and partially onto the card base. All that extra part that is on the stencil is not going to apply to the card base. I'm going to take that stamp off, reposition it to where it looks a little bit different from another angle, and use that same different idea of making sure that the stamp is partially in and partially off of the card base. What this is going to do is give us an area that's going to hold the ink, and then another area that's going to remain clean of any ink. To use the stamp cleaner, first clean the excess ink off of your stamp, then just simply rub on that stamp cleaner and then use your microfiber cloth to take off everything, and it comes clean. It's like magic. Removing that stencil, and you can see the area that was inked and not inked. Now we're going to create some more flowers with the exact same stamp and just stamp it onto a piece of 80-pound white cardstock. I'm using the same ink as before. This is Blackout ink, and it's good for any type of coloring. Now comes that delicate ink blending. I'm going to add some color onto the card base first. And if you see on the right hand side, that's the card base because you can see how it's angled and the area is inside of a rectangle area. Using the very top point of that blending buddy, and I'm dabbing off the excess ink onto the scrap area of that card stock there. Then I'm taking just the remainder of the ink and I'm adding it in a very, very light hand. This is going to give a very delicate look. There's virtually no pressure at all. I'm just letting the brush flow across the paper and making sure that I dab off that excess ink. The tip of the brush is going to allow me to keep the area very small that is applying the ink. And also, if it goes out of the area, it's okay. This is a kind of a design that is a bit more ethereal, and it lends itself very easily to coloring outside of the lines. After I add the little bit of red, then I'm going in and adding a little bit of yellow to the center of those dogwood flowers. Now the clean stencil goes right back on exactly in the same place that it was so that we can add a bit more ink blending directly to that card base. I'm going to use the Peacock Blue Atelier ink and be sure that I make the outline of the rectangle show up. So I'm going to make sure that I have a little bit more blue up against that stencil edge than I do out in the middle of the card. That's going to help me establish the boundaries and the border of exactly where the eye is supposed to stop moving in this design. Once I cut the flowers and place more flowers on top, they will hang out over that boundary, but it's very important for us to get these two blue corners established. I'm also using that very light hand and just letting the ink flow onto the paper. That is key with doing any kind of delicate work. Now with these two stamped images, I'm going to fussy cut one of them as both flowers and the other one as just the one larger flower. There is an empty space in the top right corner of this card, and that is part of the design. We're going to add our sentiment. The one tricky thing about little tiny word stamps is that my fingers always fumble over them. So I find that using some tweezers is always a big help in positioning those stamps. Once the area is treated with an anti-static embossing powder, then I added some Gold Rush Ultrafine Detail Powder from Ink on 3 directly to that area. And now using some double-sided foam, I'm putting the flowers that I fussy cut right over the areas where they would normally lay. On the two flowers, there is no boundary. It is inside and outside of the rectangle, and that's going to help draw the eye over to those corners. Now for the liquid pixie dust. It is so shiny and pretty. Just a little bit goes a very long way. To give the look of something clear and shiny that is looking kind of like a dewdrop, here are some crystal clear rhinestones from Trinity stamps, and I have them in the little tidy tray that is helping me to be able to find the right end. I like how I can just grab it. I made another version of this card and left off the embossing, and this is the version that we just finished today. It has the greeting embossing, and now here is what it looks like with just black. I'd love to know which is your favorite. Thank you for joining us on Ink on 3, and we'll see you next time.